Hello and welcome to Psychgeist, where we talk about the psychology of the era, the science of games. I am your host, Dr. Rachel Kowert, and on today's episode of Academic Ramblings, we're going to be talking about video games and friendship. For anyone who plays games, we know that they can be wonderful melting pots, so to say. They give us an opportunity to meet new people and catch up with old friends. Friends from across the globe, new people from different backgrounds. It's pretty incredible and unique space. That said, there are inevitably two counter arguments that always come up. Number one, this assumption that online friends are less socially valuable than offline friends. And number two, because they're less socially valuable, it is a problem that we are displacing the time spent with offline friends in favor of spending that time with our online friends. So what's the long and short of it all? That's what we're going to get to today by tackling these two counter arguments. Number one, are online friends less valuable than offline friends? And number two, do online friends replace offline friends through displacement? So, first question, are online friends less socially valuable than offline friends? No. Oh, sorry, did you want more? It's often claimed that the relationships we establish online are less socially valuable than our offline friends. This weaker ties assumption is based on the idea that online friends simply extend our social networks, while our offline friends are those with which we hold strong emotional ties. These assumptions are based in and around the idea of social capital. Broadly speaking, social capital refers to the resources that can be gained and exchanged in any particular social relationship. It's the exchange of social currency, so to say. This can be intellectual resources like new information, social and emotional resources like social and emotional support, and physical resources like tangible favors. For more on social capital and these two different kinds, bridging versus bonding, these strong versus weak ties, please see the previous jargon schmargon on the topic. The crux of the argument that online friendships are somehow weaker is because they are less able to provide these social resources, particularly the ones that fall in the category of physical resources. However, this argument doesn't really account for the fact that technology has given us a lot of flexibility in being able to meet these needs online for all three. New information. Reddit, anyone? Social resources through communication, through text-based communication or voice-based communication or Zoom, which we've all become very well acquainted with over the last year. And physical resources through things like Venmo and PayPal. That said, we of course have to recognize the one thing that online interactions cannot account for, and that is the power of physical touch. There's a lot of research supporting the importance of physical touch and closeness. Touch provides a sense of closeness and a sense of comfort and well-being. It increases our neurotransmitters such as dopamine, the happiness hormone, and oxytocin, a hormone involved in human bonding. That said, it's not that online relationships are less valuable because they don't have this sense of touch, although they could if they came and visited you. I know there's plenty of people who bring their online friends offline, but we'll talk about that in a minute. It's that online connections are different. Online connections cannot completely replace face-to-face interaction, but that doesn't mean they're inherently less or worse than. There really are a lot of adaptations that technology has made to help accommodate for some of the differences between them. And this is specifically the case when it comes to games, which above and beyond online friends, like the kind you might make on social media, have the added element of shared experience and playfulness. Research has noted when you ask players themselves, up to 75% of online players report making good friends within their communities. Of those, between 40 and 70% regularly discuss offline issues with their online friends, including concerns they have not yet discussed with their offline friends. This harkens back to the social capital argument, the bridging versus the bonding, the weak versus the close ties. Players themselves note that they are forming these deep emotional connections associated with bonding social capital with fellow game players when they're interviewed in these qualitative type research studies. And there's also quantitative research to support this, the numbers. You know I love the numbers. Research has found that engagement in online spaces has the potential to heighten levels of social capital of both kinds, bridging and bonding, through player experiences and connectedness. And bonding social capital derived in online gaming communities actually reduce players' perceptions of loneliness. That is, playing together fosters a sense of togetherness, which fosters social connections and interactions. Anyone who survived a 40-man raid in OG World of Warcraft can attest. This takes us to question 2. Do online relationships replace offline friends through displacement? There is evidence of displacement of offline for online friends. The more time someone spends online, specifically within games, the less time they have been found to spend fostering their offline social relationships. For example, research has found that heavier users of online games, people who report playing 30 hours a week or more, report a worse quality of offline interpersonal relationships than light users, people who reported playing 2 to 7 hours per week. Other research in the area has found that online gameplay frequency is associated with poorer family communication. Now, that said, both of these findings could be interpreted through a different lens than social displacement. What I'm talking about is, of course, social compensation. These findings simply show an association. It isn't to say that these differences didn't exist prior to finding online games. For example, perhaps heavy users of online games are doing so to establish social relationships because of a pre-existing lower quality of relationships or worse family communication. Although there is some experimental work from Smith that lends more weight to this idea of displacement happening. Smith noted patterns of cocooning among his online game players. That is, as players became more involved in online gameplay, they started to retreat into the seclusion of their home during their leisure time. That's what he calls cocooning, and started to place a higher value on their online friends than their pre-existing offline friends. Additionally, some qualitative interviews noted that online game players actively discuss the breakdown of friendships due to their gameplay. So do online friends replace offline friends through displacement? Well, they can. Do they across the board? No. Is it an inevitable outcome? No. The degree of displacement tends to vary with time played, with the sample selection, and with a variety of other individual factors. And another key point here that I mentioned earlier in the video is that this argument in and of itself is flawed because online friendships are not exclusively online. What I'm talking about here is what we call in the field modality switching, which is something we have not yet to consider, which is the idea that people take their online friends offline and their offline friends online. I myself have a significant number of friends whose villages I have visited over the last year in Animal Crossing. Friends who I met and fostered relationships offline, and these relationships then translated into online context. Playing together can even increase friendship quality, which is good news for all of us who've been playing a lot more over the last year since COVID quarantine. The same could be said the other way. I have guildies that I had in my OG World of Warcraft days who I since met offline. So I took the online relationships offline. Modality switching. Research suggests a significant number of people do this, highlighting the fact that offline and online relationships are not mutually exclusive categories. They are not distinct buckets that our friendships just fall into, but rather they are different kinds of friendships that can and do form. What might originally be perceived as a weak online friendship with a guildmate could turn into a marriage, which happens all the time. So online games and social relationships. Online games are social spaces where relationships form. While they are often assumed to be inherently weaker and displacing the stronger, more socially acceptable offline relationship, research has found that online relationships can be as strong as any offline relationships, with researchers finding that players acquire both loose or bridging and strong, close-knit or bonding social capital within these relationships. There is some evidence of displacement of offline for online friends, but this argument in and of itself is a bit of a misnomer because these two categories are not mutually exclusive. People bring their offline friends online and their online friends offline. Also, in the end, there are only so many hours in the day, so in some ways, online communication is inevitably displacing offline communication, what Nye calls the inelasticity of time. Is that inherently negative? No. Are online relationships inherently weaker? No. Is displacement in and of itself a bad thing and leading to problems of a generation of antisocial loner players living in a basement? No. If you like this video and want to see more, please like and subscribe. And until next time, be excellent to each other and always cite your sources.